Hi. We'd normally be done by now, usually, but today, since it's Easter, let us dwell in the presence of the risen Lord as long as possible. All right? Last week was Passion Week. Many of the KM members joined in early morning prayer that starts at 5:30 a.m. throughout the week, and also came to Wednesday night, Maundy Thursday, and Friday night, Good Friday service. It was truly a Passion Week. Coming to evening worships is just fine, but early morning prayers is always a struggle for me. But early mornings are one of those times that helps us to center ourselves in God throughout the whole day. So, y'all, EM and youth group, should try it sometime. Join us at 5:30 a.m. One of the things that I really like about that early morning service is when I see the sun coming up as I leave the church building. It's dark and quiet outside around 4 a.m. when I wake up and try to come to church. But around 6:30 and 7 when I leave church, it feels refreshing and lively, except for the fact that the traffic builds up when I drive back home. In today's passage, we see that on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene was walking through the darkness before dawn when no one was outside. Just 3 days ago, Mary saw Jesus' death on the cross. The very person that gave her life, joy, was gone. She's still grieving the death of her dear friend, teacher, and Lord. But she walked all the way there just to find out that the tomb was opened. When she saw the stone was rolled away, she was so shocked that without even attempting to look inside, she runs to the disciples to tell them that someone stole the body. Robbing graves was apparently a common crime during that time. She might have not been able to bear the thought that the body was actually stolen. Mary, still terrified and worried, comes back to the tomb. What we know from Peter and the beloved disciple is that the tomb was just clearly empty. For Mary, what she worried about earlier that morning is confirmed. Jesus was now completely gone. She couldn't believe what was happening. She has lost hope of seeing Jesus again. So the angel's presence didn't mean anything to her. She couldn't even recognize Jesus at first. Like the two disciples who were on their way to Emmaus in the Gospel of Luke, when Jesus appeared in front of her, Mary didn't recognize him. Isn't it so surprising that these people couldn't recognize Jesus? They were following him all over the place, listening to his teachings and seeing his miracles. They even heard that Jesus speak of his fate, that he will rise again after 3 days. But so overwhelmed by sorrow and shame, they couldn't even think that Jesus would come back to them. As many of you would know, as someone who knows the end of the story, it's so frustrating. But for Mary, seeing Jesus again was simply impossible. He was not only dead, but for her, his body was also stolen. Easter may be a joyous time for many of us, but it's also a confusing time. Some might be questioning, is this all true? I still can't believe this, especially during a time when so much pain and suffering seems to prevail, not only in my own life, but in this world. Didn't Jesus promise peace? If there is a God, a risen Lord, why still all this? Some of us are in darkness. Our eyes are covered from seeing the true light. As a Korean, I'm also reminded of the Seoul ferry incident that happened 3 years ago today, ironically, on an Easter Sunday. Some of the family members of those people who were on that ferry are still in a dark place. It's hard to see the risen Lord, the risen Jesus, in such tragedy. It's hard to see the risen Lord in the struggles and pains of our lives. The tomb is empty, but we can't see life in it yet. The darkness seems to tell us that what is left is just death. The angels in our lives and Jesus are asking us from the empty tomb, why are you still crying? What are you looking for? But we're not capable of seeing the light by ourselves. It was when Jesus called Mary by her name when she was able to recognize him. The shepherd calls the sheep by name and leads them. The sheep listens to the shepherd's voice, and the sheep follow the shepherd because they know his voice. Mary, who knew Jesus' voice, finally sees him. Now for her, everything makes sense. The open and empty tomb, the leftover linen and cloth, the two angels chilling inside the tomb, all what Jesus has taught so far, all the miracles that Jesus showed, it all makes sense now. But what Jesus tells her after Mary recognizes him is just strange. Have you ever seen one of those videos online that shows U.S. soldiers returning home? Some of these scenes are really touching and cute. Like those which the soldier would secretly go to the kid's school to visit his son or daughter. The person would open the classroom door. The kid, not knowing what's going on, sees the person coming in. And after a brief moment, realizes that that person is his or her dad that the kid hasn't seen for such a long time. The kid would stand up and run straight toward his or her dad and hold on to him so tight as if she would never let go of him forever. Now imagine the dad telling the daughter, don't hold on to me because I'm not going to be leaving anytime soon. Go to your mom and your brothers and sisters and tell them that I'm back. I mean, they wouldn't even post that kind of video, but wouldn't we think, what's wrong with this person? She was waiting for you so long. How could he do such a harsh thing to his daughter or son? This is what it initially felt like when I read the latter part of today's passage. Jesus tells Mary, do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. It seems like a harsh command to someone who was in such big pain and grief. We may think that Mary would have wanted to hold on to Jesus, who she thought was gone forever. But to Mary, who now believes in the resurrection, this was an assurance that Jesus is going to complete his mission. And Jesus' message that he will ascend is not a complete departure, but is the confirmation that the believing community now knows God as Jesus knows God. Jesus has opened up the possibility of a new and full relationship with God. The message that Mary had to share is not just that Jesus is risen, but the Father is also our Father. The God is also our God. That we have a new identity as God's children through Christ. She is to deliver a message of hope, life, and assurance to the disciples who are still in a dark place, filled with doubt and shame. The empty tomb was not a sign of death and despair or emptiness, but of life and hope and assurance. Mary gladly follows Jesus' command and becomes the first disciple to preach on the Easter message. While preparing this sermon, I encountered a story of a little boy. Little Philip, born with Down syndrome, attended a third grade Sunday school. Typical of that age, the children didn't really accept Philip for his differences. The Sunday after Easter, the teacher brought egg-shaped containers to class. Each student receiving one, the children were told to go outside on that lovely spring day, find some symbol for new life, and put it in the egg-like container. Back in the classroom, they would share their new life symbols, opening the containers one by one. The teacher began to open them. After each one, whether flower, butterfly, or leaf, the class would ooh and ah. Then one was open, revealing nothing inside. The children exclaimed, "That's stupid. It's not fair. Someone just didn't do their assignment." Then Philip spoke up, "That's mine." One kid just said, "Philip, you never do anything right." But Philip insisted, "I did so do it. I did do it. It's empty." The tomb was empty. Silence followed. Unfortunately, Philip died not long afterward from an infection which most people would have just shrugged off. At the funeral, this class marched up the altar not with flowers, but with empty egg-shaped containers. Philip was preaching the good news of Easter. His situation didn't prevent him from seeing the risen Lord. The students heard and learned from Philip the true message of the empty tomb. Philip was following his call, Jesus' command, to share the message to those who are still not able to see true life. There was nothing empty about Philip's eggshell. The darkness of the empty tomb is at first confusing. It's a mystery that even the disciples of Jesus couldn't comprehend easily. It makes us question. It makes us doubt. We often walk into those dark places that makes us question our beliefs, our identity, and our relationship with God. But Jesus first comes to us by asking, "Why are you still crying? What are you still looking for?" There is no doubt that those situations are hard, and we don't know what to look for. Jesus gently asks us to think about what really matters. What we cried about and what we're looking for might be preventing us from seeing the truth. The risen Lord is right in front of us, but we're not capable of seeing it yet. At that moment, Jesus calls us by our names. Jesus calls us to realize that the mission that Jesus will complete is far greater than the darkness that seems to prevail. We have to hear the risen Lord calling us today. And we are called not to linger in darkness, but to preach life to those who are still in that darkness. My brothers and sisters, the tomb is empty. Christ is risen. And Christ will accomplish his mission and restore our relationship with God. It is why we can hope despite the suffering and pain that exists in this world. Christ enables us to hope and have life by calling our names. Let us share the risen Lord with hope and joy. Amen.